Hello.
Hello.
So, Katie, tell me about how you ended up in an Alaska Native community.
Well, I was lucky enough to be able to go with my husband, who worked for the company that owns AC Stores. And so the first place I ever went to in Alaska was Barrow, which, of course, now is Uktiavik. Am I pronouncing that correctly? Close
Yes.
enough. And so that was very exciting to us. And I thought it was pretty funny because his company interviewed me as well. They wanted to make sure I knew there wasn't a mall, and I thought that was pretty funny. But anyway, so I ended up living in Barrow for a short time, and then in Kotzebue for a couple of years, and then also then in Kodiak, where I lived for 5 years, and also was able to visit a number of the villages outside of Kodiak because I ended up working at Kodiak College and had students in those areas. So that was fun.
Oh, okay. So, tell me about the things you learned about being in an Alaska Native community that helped you fit in better.
Well, I would say the first thing is just to be to have an attitude of soaking it all in and learning and observing and talking to people and listening, and 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 it might be research or asking questions or reading books too, but just kind of finding out as much as you can, getting information. But when I think it's different if you're going to be living there maybe than if you're visiting for a short time with a specific goal. But for a visit, I remember people gave me advice, which always was bring something. And so I think that was good advice because I think in pretty much any culture that's understood as, you're trying to offer something. And you can ask around to find out what might be a good thing to bring, to be able to give to people. But if you're going to live there, then it's the most important thing is to just be involved in the community. And so I was going there without a job. My husband had a job. I had been a teacher previously, but the timing of it was, I didn't have a job when I got there. So being able to participate in softball, for example, that was something I, certainly wasn't an expert at, but that was what the community really did for people of my age. So it was something I could easily get involved in, and it was fabulous, and it was a way to meet people, and it was so interesting that we really did have games in the Midnight Sun and all of that, and the whole experience of it, despite the fact that I wasn't very good at it, but was, I think, one good thing. And then I would just say, like I said, trying to learn from people, let people know that you want to learn about and hear stories. And I think taking the time to be comfortable with silences and just be around people and soak in what's going on. And other things that I tried to do was they actually, there was a library, there was a college or campus in all the places that I was, or at least a hub of something like that. And those were the places I gravitated to because generally there were little classes or, people teaching how to do a craft or how to make smoked salmon or something. And so to me that was, more formal. So at first I felt a little more comfortable with it because that was what I was used to, rather than, showing up maybe at someone's house or something like that.
Saying, teach me.
Exactly. Right. However, but that's another, and probably the most important thing is accept invitations. Any invitation from anybody, accept it. And
so what did you bring on the plane when you went to communities?
Well, when I was in Kodiak, I was given very specific advice to bring well, there wasn't a lot of stores, but anyway, Safeway donuts was what they told me. Bring Safeway donuts. And
Basic food group.
basic food. And I found that walking from the airstrip into town with a pink box, people knew what that was, and many people stopped to talk to me. So it was a success. But what are some other things that you have and you've seen people bring? What are some good things to bring?
For me, one of the safe ones has always been I will bring mandarin oranges because they're small, but they're oranges, and we like berries. So these are like humongous berries, and they've got a great flavor.
Yeah.
And take a couple of bags of those, and they're pretty easy to give away. Sometimes I will try bringing different kinds of tea as well.
Oh.
So I've brought cinnamon tea. People love to tease about them and have fun with them. But, just different kinds of tea seem to be helpful.
Well, that's a great idea because of the easy to carry, and then as far as mandarin oranges, my husband's in the grocery business, so I know that sometimes produce doesn't always travel well to some more rural areas. So I think that's a great idea for that, just because it's not always readily available at the store in the community. So
right,
that's a great idea.
Yeah. So tell me about food, traditional food. How do you approach that?
Being willing to try and attend things where there are foods and ask questions, but also be open. And actually, I ended up being a teacher in Kotzebue, and they did have a nice orientation where we were provided with Muktuk and some other things, which actually that was the first time I had it, and I thought it was good to have that opportunity. But there's not always. That was a larger community, so we had a number of new teachers, and so there was more of a orientation, which was
formal event.
Yeah, more of a formal event.
Huh.
But I learned about a lot of new foods by just doing a little bit of volunteer work. I volunteered for the Kobuk 440 dog sled race, did their web page for them, and so was invited to their potluck, which of course was very exciting because of all the mushers that were there and so on. But tried a lot of foods that weren't labeled, and was surprised. Specifically, I think it was, when is the Kobuk 440? February? Anyway, it was later in the winter, and I saw this bowl of gleaming blueberries and took quite a few, and then found out that it was a variation of Eskimo ice cream and had seal oil, so I didn't expect that, but but it was I thought it was important to talk to people about it and to eat it.
Welcome to put as much as you want on the plate, but you don't want to waste seal oil.
Exactly.
That's a rule.
Yes, indeed.
Well, that's funny. So, all right. Well, that's good. What about, I think you referenced some things about learning about behavior. What were some of the things that were sort of a shift for you in terms of?
Well, I find that a lot of the people you encounter don't initially react, enthusiastically to a new person, and so not taking offense, but realizing that you kind of have to build up to becoming a welcome guest, and you just have to build relationships. You really just, and it takes time, and so it's not necessarily going to be, a parade welcoming you when you come, but instead, it's a two-way street of building relationships that, in the end are very strong. But I would, that's basically.
So if you were to tell new teachers about some other things, or is there anything that we haven't mentioned yet?
Well, I would say in a position such as a teacher, always remember that you can learn as much from your students as they can learn from you, and giving them the opportunity and building relationships with them as well that are learning from one another and valuing their knowledge and experience, I think is extremely important.
And I like how you, the theme of what you're doing is it's getting out of the teacher housing.
Yes.
Get out into the community and participate.
Right. Which reminds me of another funny story. When I didn't have a car, and I didn't need one, and I was a little bit taken aback when one of my middle school students pulled over on his four-wheeler and asked if I needed a ride. At this time in my life, it doesn't seem weird, but at that time, it was a role reversal kind of thing that I don't know, I didn't expect for a young student to offer me a ride.
That's good. Yes, there are adjustments. We have to make adjustments when we're going from one community to the next. And these are some examples. And the goal is whatever it takes to become a welcome guest during our time. And I appreciate your sharing some good examples of how to do that.
Well, sure. That was fun.